Mixed martial arts fighting is rough. They aren't playing games, but at the same time, the UFC has rules. But these fighters can go too far. Sometimes how they fight, sometimes what they say. Today, we'll check out UFC fighters that went too far. There are guys that went too far with the trash talk, others that were banned from the UFC completely for what they did. Check it out with us. First up, Paul Daley and his sucker punch. Let's start off with a bang. Or should that be a pow? Back in the day, Semtex was an upcoming fighter and people believed that he was going to be the next big thing in the UFC. But he might have believed his own hype too much, since he got seriously frustrated when things didn't go his way. It was during the matchup between Paul Daley and Josh Koscheck that it was the fight that would eliminate a contender. The winner would go on to fight the then welterweight champion, and the stakes were high. They were the only thing that stood in the way of the other one for championship contention. And if Daley won, he would have had the shot to become the first British UFC champion ever. Everything was to fight for. But things didn't go to plan. The entire fight was ruled by Koscheck, and it seemed like Daley wasn't making any impact. But that was about to change. After the final round ended and it was pretty clear Koscheck had won, Daley charged him and got him with a sucker punch. Luckily, the ref was quick and he got Daley subdued, but that little stunt meant that not only did he lose the fight, but also his spot in the UFC. UFC president Dana White said that it wouldn't matter how good Daley would become, he would never fight in the UFC again. Next, Conor McGregor and his attack on other fighters. He has done some pretty wild stunts, and people believe that McGregor doesn't know where the line is. So it is routine for him to go far. But one of those times almost landed him in jail and cost him his career. It was right before a really big fight, but instead of waiting to get into the octagon, McGregor decided that it would be a good idea to make some trouble outside of it. He pulled together some friends and this mob went to attack a bus full of other fighters. One of the things he did directly was to take a dolly and throw it through the bus window, injuring some of the guys that were inside. Why? Because he could have had some grievances toward those fighters? We aren't sure. The rumors of it all being a publicity stunt has been completely denied, and some of those guys had pulled out of their own fights and lose out on those paychecks. They even got restraining orders against McGregor at the time. The attack took McGregor to court. He could have gone to jail, but to get a deal, he pled guilty and got off with a fine and community service. Honestly, it could have been much worse, and many believe that he should have faced harsher sanctions at the UFC. Now, Jason High shoving the ref. This was for sure the moment where a fighter went too far. But did the punishment really fit the crime? Was it a little unfair? Let's check it out. It happened after a fight between High and Rafael dos Anjos. Anjos was dominating the fight, and the referee Kevin Mulhall decided that it was enough. He stopped the fight, and High lost by way of technical knockout. Anjos was celebrating. The ref went over to High to check on him. He apparently didn't feel like they needed to stop the race, and High shoved Mulhall away from him. Let's be clear, he didn't punch him or hurt him really, he just shoved him away. I mean, I get it, you should never lay a hand on a ref, that is never acceptable. But Dana White decided that he too needed to get a lifelong ban. In my opinion, that might have been a little too harsh. This was a guy that had never been in trouble before that, and he publicly apologized straight after. He was also suspended from the New Mexico Athletic Commission for 1 year, a punishment that seemed fairer. These fights can be brutal, and fighters' emotions are running high. Obviously, keeping the referees safe is a priority, and there should be zero tolerance. But losing your entire career over a shove seems a little bit too much. What do you think? Did Dana White and the UFC do the right thing by banning Jason High? Should they have been more lenient? Let me know in the comments section. We would love to hear your thoughts. But don't go anywhere. There are still loads of times where fighters went too far coming up next. These will blow your mind. Up next, Sean Strickland's shocking comments. This has to be one of the worst times where a fighter went too far with the things that he said. It wasn't aimed at anyone directly, but the comments were just chilling. He had just had an incredible fight with Uriah Hall that landed him in the spotlight. But soon, what he had said would completely overshadow what was done in the Octagon. It was a wild conversation, and Sean even went on to say he considers himself a psychopath, because that is a great personality type to have in a really bloody and brutal fighting sport. But anyway, he went on to say that he would be super happy if he ever got to kill anyone inside the Octagon. That is pretty darn terrible. And while there are lots of rules to try and make sure that this doesn't ever happen, it is still a very real possibility in MMA fighting. Joking about it is not cool. And if his comments weren't a joke, then it would have been even worse. I really can't believe someone would say that. Now, if the terrible thing does happen and something goes wrong, everyone will wonder how much of an accident it actually was. Hopefully, it never comes to that. Now we have the Thiago Silva police standoff. Another wild ride. This one sounds more like a police show than real life. It all started with Silva and his estranged wife at the time, Thesa. She had admitted to having an affair with the founder of the team, Popovich Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Center in Fort Lauderdale, Pablo Popovich. The couple reportedly argued about the affair, and Thiago pulled a silver revolver, and he even went as far as putting the gun into her mouth while threatening her. At that time, she got a restraining order, hoping that it would stop him from contacting her. It did not. He drove by the house and also sent her messages threatening to kill her. The next night, he went to the training center and he was blasting the horn until Thesa came out. He demanded to see Pablo, or he would go inside and kill everyone inside the center. But when Popovich did approach the car, Thiago just threatened to kill both of them, and then he drove off and went to barricade himself in the house. He was reportedly in a standoff with the SWAT teams for hours before he gave himself up. Silva's now ex-wife Thesa has since claimed that the fighter was hooked on cocaine and that was the reason for his violent behavior. It got him a ban from the UFC, even though the charges were later dropped. Next, Rousimar Palhares for not releasing other fighters. This is another fighter that got a lifelong ban from the UFC and who Dana White said would never fight again. But his history of repeating the same behavior might make this ban completely just. He went too far in the Octagon a few times. He would submit other fighters and then he wouldn't release them even after they tapped out. A dangerous game in a sport like MMA. He was first suspended from the UFC after he refused to let Thomas Drawl out of a heel hook. At the time, he was suspended for just 90 days. It was a big mistake, but possible that he just didn't notice his opponent tapping out and that the adrenaline was just too much to stop him right away. But then the next incident happened when he was back to fighting. He submitted Mike Pierce quickly, but once again, he refused to let him go even when it was obvious that Pierce was tapping out. It was completely irresponsible and totally unacceptable, and Dana White made it clear that after the second incident, Palhares was done with the UFC. Lastly, BJ Penn street fighting. He is one of the best fighters in UFC history and has done some really awesome stuff for the sport and making it popular. But it has been a while since he has really been great. He should have retired a while ago. He isn't winning anymore and hasn't been for years. Dana White said it was just hard to turn him down if he asked for a fight, but that he didn't love the fact that Penn was still fighting. Then a video was released of Penn in a street fight, and that was it. White said that it was a wrap and that Penn needed to focus on his personal life. No more fighting. Can you think of more times when UFC fighters went too far? Let us know. Thanks for watching.